Can't you move it? My mother asked like she was talking about a dentist appointment instead of surgery. I stared at the phone in my hand, certain I had misunderstood her. Mom, it's not a haircut, I said quietly. It's a hospital operation. Silence filled the line for a moment before my father's voice joined the call. You know your sister's wedding is that weekend, he said flatly. The whole family will be there. I waited for the obvious solution. That they would attend the wedding while I recovered in the hospital. Instead, my mother sighed impatiently. Emily already paid for the venue. Guests are flying in. Don't make this complicated, Avery Caldwell. That was the moment I realized something painful. They had already chosen. My surgery date had taken months to secure. The doctor had warned me delaying it wasn't ideal. But my parents weren't asking if I was safe. They were asking if I was convenient. Avery, my father continued, his tone hardening, your sister's wedding happens once. I looked down at the hospital paperwork on my kitchen table. You're right, I said slowly. Exactly, my mother replied with relief. But they misunderstood what I meant. Because that was the exact moment I decided something else would only happen once too. My relationship with them. After the call ended, the apartment felt painfully quiet. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the hospital folder while the words my father had said replayed in my head. Your sister's wedding happens once. It was strange how easily they said it, like my body was a scheduling inconvenience. The surgery wasn't cosmetic. It wasn't optional. My doctor had explained everything carefully 2 weeks earlier while pointing at the scan glowing on his monitor. Waiting longer increases complications, he told me. I strongly recommend we keep this date. I had nodded, trusting the plan. But now my parents wanted me to call the hospital and move it, so I could smile in photos at my sister Emily's wedding. Emily, the golden child of our family. Growing up, the rules had always bent gently around her life. My parents called it support. I learned to call it something else. That evening my phone buzzed again. Emily's name appeared on the screen. I almost ignored it. Instead I answered. Her voice sounded cheerful, like nothing serious existed in the world. Mom said you're thinking about changing the surgery date, she said casually. I didn't answer right away. Because the next sentence she said was the one that made everything inside me go cold. Honestly, she laughed softly, you'd kind of ruin the wedding if you weren't there. I held the phone against my ear, waiting for the punchline. Emily had always liked dramatic humor. I assumed she would laugh and say she was kidding. She didn't. You're serious? I asked quietly. Of course, she replied, still cheerful. People will ask where you are. It'll turn into a whole thing. A whole thing. The words settled slowly in my chest. My surgery, the months of pain leading up to it, the fear I hadn't admitted to anyone, all of it apparently ranked below awkward questions at a wedding reception. I'll be in a hospital bed, Emily, I said. Well, yeah, she said lightly. But the photos are that weekend. Photos. I closed my eyes for a second. Growing up, my parents used to tell people Emily was the easy child. She was bright, social, effortlessly charming. I was the responsible one. The one who adjusted. The one who understood when plans changed. But something about this conversation felt different. I can't move the surgery, I finally said. The line went quiet. Then Emily sighed, the same irritated sigh our mother used. God, Avery, she muttered. Do you really need to make everything about you? That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because suddenly something inside me clicked into place. And for the first time in years I stopped trying to be the understanding one. The silence on the phone stretched longer than either of us expected. Normally this was the moment I would apologize. That had been my role in the family for as long as I could remember. Smooth things over. Make adjustments. Keep the peace. But this time I didn't say anything. Emily eventually broke the quiet with a sharp exhale. So you're seriously choosing a surgery over my wedding? The way she framed it made my chest tighten. Like I was the selfish one. It's not a choice, I replied. It's medical. That's dramatic, she said immediately. Dramatic. I'd heard that word my entire life. Dramatic when I questioned things. Dramatic when I pushed back. Dramatic whenever my needs interrupted the story my family preferred to tell about us. Look, Emily continued impatiently, Mom already talked to the hospital coordinator. Rescheduling isn't impossible. That made me sit up. Wait, I said slowly. Mom called the hospital? Yeah, Emily said casually. She's just trying to help. My stomach dropped. My surgery wasn't even a discussion to them anymore. They had already started rearranging it. Without asking me. Without telling me. Without caring whether I was okay with it. And in that moment, something inside me shifted permanently. Because I realized they weren't asking me to compromise. They were informing me that my life came second. I ended the call without another word. For several minutes I just sat there, staring at the hospital paperwork like it suddenly belonged to someone else. Then my phone rang again. Mom. I already knew the tone she would use before answering. Calm. Practical. Like she was solving a scheduling problem instead of interfering with a surgery. Avery, she began gently, I spoke to the coordinator this afternoon. My jaw tightened. You had no right to do that. Oh honey, don't be so sensitive, she said immediately. I was only asking about alternative dates. Alternative dates. Like my body worked around wedding invitations. The doctor said delaying isn't recommended, I reminded her. Well, doctors always say that, she replied dismissively. Emily's wedding can't be moved. Of course it couldn't. Her venue. Her flowers. Her perfect photos. All immovable. My health, apparently, was flexible. Avery, my father's voice joined suddenly from the background, you need to think about the family here. That sentence made something cold settle in my chest. For years, thinking about the family had always meant one thing. Sacrificing quietly. Adjusting politely. Swallowing frustration so no one else felt uncomfortable. I looked down at the hospital forms again. Then I said something my parents had clearly never expected to hear from me. You're right, I said calmly. I should think about the family. And that's exactly when I stopped being part of it. My parents didn't understand what I meant. My mother actually sounded relieved. Good, she said warmly. I knew you'd come around. I almost laughed. For years they had confused silence with agreement. But this time, something inside me had already settled into place. I'm not moving the surgery, I said calmly. The relief vanished from the line. What? My mother snapped. The surgery date stays exactly where it is. A pause followed, heavy with disbelief. My father spoke next, his voice sharp. So you're refusing to support your sister. That accusation should have hurt. Instead, it felt strangely distant. I'm choosing my health, I replied. You're being selfish, my mother said quickly. Selfish. Another familiar label. Whenever I stopped accommodating them, that word appeared like a family rulebook they believed everyone followed except me. You know what selfish is? I said quietly. Calling my hospital without asking me. Neither of them answered. But I could hear the tension in their breathing. Then my father made the statement he probably believed would end the argument. If you miss Emily's wedding, he said coldly, don't expect things between us to stay the same. I stared at the surgery date printed on the paperwork. The truth was painfully simple. They were right about one thing. Things weren't going to stay the same. Because I had already decided they wouldn't. The wedding invitation stayed on my kitchen counter for weeks. Cream paper. Gold lettering. Emily Caldwell and Daniel Pierce, celebrating the beginning of their perfect life. Every time I walked past it, I felt the quiet pressure my parents believed would eventually make me give in. They kept calling. First reminders. Then lectures. Then silence when it became clear I wasn't changing my mind. The surgery date arrived on a gray morning that smelled faintly of rain. I drove myself to the hospital before sunrise, my overnight bag resting in the passenger seat. My parents never asked what time I was checking in. They were busy with rehearsal dinners and seating charts. In the waiting room, a nurse clipped a bracelet around my wrist while explaining the procedure again. You have family coming later? She asked kindly. I shook my head. No, I said softly. She smiled anyway. We'll take good care of you. Across town, guests were probably gathering at the venue by then. Dresses being zipped. Cameras being unpacked. For a moment I wondered if Emily noticed my empty chair. If my parents mentioned why I wasn't there. Then my phone buzzed on the small hospital table beside me. A message from my mother. 3 words. You made your choice. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I turned the phone off before surgery. When I woke up after surgery, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. No wedding music. No speeches. No family voices debating seating charts or photo angles. Just the soft hum of hospital machines and a nurse adjusting the 4 beside my bed. How are you feeling? She asked gently. Sore, I admitted. But okay. The surgery had gone well. The doctor told me that later, smiling in the calm, professional way people do when delivering good news. I spent 2 days recovering in that quiet room. During that time, my phone filled with messages. None from my parents. But dozens from extended relatives. Apparently my absence at the wedding had become impossible to ignore. Guests had asked questions. My parents had struggled to explain why their other daughter wasn't there. Eventually the truth came out. That I had been in surgery. That my parents had asked me to move it. The reactions had not been kind to them. When I finally left the hospital, I drove home slowly, the spring air cool through the open window. My parents never called. Neither did Emily. And for the first time in my life, the silence between us didn't feel painful. It felt peaceful. Some relationships end with screaming. Ours ended with a quiet decision.